G'day guys and gal. No, this is not a meme video or some kind of early April Fool's joke. A benefit of sacrificing most important real life knowledge to make room for more Warhammer lore in my brain is that I'm able to take insights from the lore that casuals probably wouldn't be able to perceive. A recent insight that I have realized is that the Night Lords, the sadistic criminal terrorists, are actually the most humane, ethical, and relatable legion out of all of them, including the Salamanders. Not because they're friendly or say nice things or hug people. No, they don't really do that. However, it's their actions that make them so goddamn morally good, as well as the fact that their key characters, such as Talos, Sevatar, and Malkarion, are genuinely good guys who have gone out of their way to do positive, meaningful things for innocent people. On top of that, the Night Lords are one of the few traitor legions whose rebellion against the Imperium is actually pretty justified, and actually makes sense, unlike most other legions like the Death Guard or Sons of Horus. Before we get started, if you want to enrich your knowledge of 40k lore whilst being perpetually entertained, even when doing mundane tasks like cooking or cleaning, then you need to start listening to Warhammer audio books, or just more Majorkill content. The issue though is you can't just blast Horus Rising when you're on the train or going for a walk. The solution is brought to you by today's sponsor Raycon, premium wireless earbuds that cost around half of what you'd pay for most other brands. They have noise isolation to get that crisp audio, custom gel tips for a perfect fit, water and sweat resistance so they can be used in the gym, and so much more. Not to mention the 8 hours of playtime, so perfect for a plane ride. Stop being a caveman that still uses these heavy bulky headphones or those peasant wired earphones and join us. Raycon isn't just an earbud brand though, they also have high quality affordable speakers and headphones. So to pick up your very own Raycon earbuds or other audio products for 15% off, then use my link below or go to buyraycon.com/majorkill. Trust me guys and gal, once you try these you'll be wondering what took you so long. Cheers to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Today we'll go over why the Night Lords are a bunch of misunderstood chillers who are arguably the most ethically sound out of all the legions. Let's get into it. To understand this controversial opinion, or fact as I'll boldly state, you need to understand what ethics is. If I call everyone a retard then beat the shit out of a baby in order to save the lives of 1 million babies who are all about to get killed in a napalm strike, am I not a fucking hero? I saved 1 million babies by sacrificing one, a net profit of 999,999 babies. It's like the tram track's ethical dilemma, but also not really, since that napalm strike would have come from me as well. So it's not much of a dilemma at all. And even if you weren't going to be the one that napalm strikes them, it's still much better to curb stomp the one baby. This is the Night Lords' philosophy in a nutshell during their Great Crusade era compliances. They do not like to have hectic pitch battles and open warfare. They're actually really bad at it. Instead, they love to infiltrate a world, kidnap a few key characters, horrifically torture them, and then broadcast the torturing. Every day the world resisted, they would kidnap more innocents and continue to viciously tear them apart until the planet lost its will and surrendered. Compare this to the noble Blood Angels, who would bomb cities to dust, then drop pod in to rip everyone to shreds, people who were just defending their homeworld from foreign invaders, or the Salamanders, whose flamethrowers would ignite entire towns in seconds, killing men, women, and children. What about the honorable Space Wolves, who would tear apart an entire world with axe and teeth within a week? There are in-lore examples of even the most loyal and noble legions going extremely fucking hard on the genocide side of things. Funnily enough, one of the very few times the Night Lords used a virus bomb on an enemy was when they were battling a Slaneshi Chaos cult during the Great Crusade. Bit of irony there for ya. The Night Lords' reputation for brutality was so well known that systems who had heard of them would surrender if they caught wind of the Sons of Curse heading their way, creating many bloodless endings to rebellions. They were the Emperor's terrorists, his psychological warfare specialists who would shed the least amount of blood out of all the legions. However, they, and almost they alone, were censored, being labelled as sadistic murderers not worthy of their birthright. They were being punished and looked down upon for fulfilling their Emperor-given role. If we look at their Primarch, he took a world full of rapists, murderers, pedophiles, thieves, unironic furries, and wife bashers and turned it into the most lawful planet in the galaxy. Sure, he should have then built education and quality of life infrastructure instead of just ruling through absolute fear, but during his rule, millions of rapes, thousands of murderers, and dozens of furry orgies were never committed. He was justice. Flawed, retarded justice, but still justice. Conrad was also the first Primarch to know about the heresy due to his future visions. It terrified him, so he told Fulgrim, one of his closest brothers. Would this warning reach the Emperor and change the course of fate in favor of the Imperium? Fuck no. Once again, Conrad got dogged, with Fulgrim telling Dawn, who then roasted the shit out of Conrad. When Nostromo, Conrad's homeworld, returned to its criminal ways, and the Night Lord Legion began to get full of criminal recruits that were tainting the Legion, Conrad wasn't happy. He was disgusted. So disgusted, in fact, that to try and maintain his Legion's nobility, he destroyed his own homeworld. He would rather cripple his own Legion than let them devolve into a bunch of sadistic demigods. His favoured sons were legends. Sevatar was a god-tier warrior, but also a pretty cool guy with a strong moral code. When he was a prisoner of the Dark Angels, an innocent psycho woman was viciously beaten by one of the jailers. Sevatar broke out of his cell, massacred the jailer, then calmly surrendered to be taken back to his cell. He inflicted justice upon an evil man. The Night Lord Talos treated his servants with respect and even killed a useful fellow Night Lord when that Night Lord murdered one of his servants. He would go on to free his servants and ensure the safety of them and their child, allowing himself to be killed instead of saved in order to protect them. Malkarion the War Sage protected an innocent woman from the Eldar who were on a rampage, walking slowly in his dreadnought form so she could keep up, and also turning on his lights so she could see. He protected her long enough for her to get to safety, making her and Talos's two servants the only survivors out of thousands of mortals that used to live on the Night Lord's ship. They survived because of the efforts of the Night Lords. This was all after the heresy, by the way, when they were all traitors. Even when the heresy broke out and the Night Lords turned their back on an Imperium that hated them, they still maintained a strong code of honor and control. They despised chaos and rarely used it, with Sevatar even spitting on the ground when Argul Tal, a half-demon word-bearer, tried to speak to him. Post-heresy, most of them stayed corruption-free, one of the only traitor legions to do so. Going back to Conrad, it was a pretty complicated bloke who had some serious issues. The biggest one was his fracturing sanity as a result of his visions. These visions caused him to have memory loss, mood swings, and schizophrenia. He knew it was too late to save the soul of his legion, and he knew he had become an evil prick. So he did the noblest thing he could. He allowed an assassin to take his head in what was more or less an assisted suicide. Sure, he did claim that he allowed his death to have vindication, but I think it was more than that. Most of the other traitor Primarchs would have and did ascend to Demon Prince status if they were him, likely fixing his mind in the process, but he stayed true to himself to the end. When Talos and his warband traveled to Saguelsa, their old homeworld, and genocided the Imperial settlement there and sacrificed the astropaths in an extremely agonizing way in order to send a shockwave through the warp, it wasn't just sadism and evilness that drove them. Their world had been settled by the enemy. Obviously, they were going to fucking kill them, and the torturing and killing of the astropaths crippled many Imperial worlds, worlds of their enemy. They were at war, and it was actually a stroke of tactical genius. Now, I do admit, the Night Lords have done some seriously bad shit. I'm not saying they are a benevolent or flawless legion. They are very unethical and pretty evil. But this video isn't a standalone about their moral compass. It's comparing them to the other legions. So despite their atrocities, they still have the lowest amount of innocent blood on their hands and committed the least amount of destruction of infrastructure. Annoyingly, in recent times, the Night Lord Riders have been removing their nuance and unexpected wholesomeness, opting to instead make them a bunch of one-dimensional terrorists, which is really shit because the moral dilemmas and grey areas that many legions displayed during the start of heresy, or for the Night Lords beyond that, was some of the best parts of the Traitor Legion's lore. There's a reason why the loyalists from the Traitor Legions are some of the best characters in the entire setting. The internal conflict is very compelling. However, with the death of Talos, loss of Malkarion, the death of Sevatar, there really isn't many more compelling Night Lords who believe in justice. All there is left are the criminals from Nostromo or the evil new recruits who don't really understand Night Lord culture. There is Decimus, the successor of Talos, who could bring the Night Lords back to what made them interesting, but we haven't gotten any lore about him in a long time. So yeah, it really seems like GW is trying to contradict me here by going overboard on the evil vibe recently, but let's put the focus on Prime Night Lords, true Night Lords, when Talos, Conrad, and Sevatar were a thing. Another point that people don't seem to realize is that the Prime Night Lord Legion was brave. Talos faced down the Phoenix Lord Janzar, knowing he was going to die, but he didn't even flinch. Sevatar was the only Space Marine who could even beat Sigismund in a duel. Conrad took on the Lion and the Dark Angels during the Heresy, something that even Horus was too scared to do. Conrad faced his brother without fear and even happily antagonized the Lion to his face. Was this a good idea? No. Conrad got fucked up pretty badly, and his legion and fleet were devastated by the Dark Angels. They were feared for a reason, but he took took it on the chin. He didn't complain or back down. He performed his duty to the War Master, a duty he knew and likely foresaw would end in defeat and humiliation, a duty that most other traitor legions were too scared to do. I want to make a quick note about the Night Lords being the most humanized and relatable legion. When Nostromo went back to being a crime-ridden shithole, its recruitment standards dropped dramatically. The new Night Lords lacked strict psycho-indoctrination and were chosen from the physically and mentally strongest recruits, aka violent criminals. Whilst this did produce some shit Astartes, it was also the way Talos and his best friend Zal, another legendary Night Lord, were recruited. It kept them in touch with their human side, allowing them to have complicated discussions and debates with their battle brothers and human servants. The Night Lord Mercutian saw the Great Crusade as a time of glory and honor. He wishes they could return to those times. Talos sees the Great Crusade as folly, as it was under the direction of the Emperor, their now enemy. When some Blood Angels got aboard Talos' ship and killed a bunch of people, including a young girl who was the only person to be born on the ship for decades, that young girl's father was distraught and began sowing the seeds of mutiny. Talos caught on to this and marched to the father, but instead of killing him as an example, he showed empathy, telling the father that he personally hunted down and killed the Blood Angel that murdered his daughter. He got vengeance for him. He then warned him that he would not tolerate dissidents before leaving the father alive. Sure, one of Talos' brothers then came back later and murdered the shit out of the father, but that's besides the point. When Talos' best friend Zal and Sirion were killed, Talos was devastated, even staying with Sirion as he died to comfort his friend. Prime Night Lords, true Night Lords, were ethical and humane, honorable, avoiding mass death and destruction. They fulfilled their duty without complaint, faced down mightier foes without fear, and their key characters were known for their honor, loyalty, and unexpected compassion. It's just a shame that all the good Night Lords are gone, and all we have left is a bunch of mustache-twirling villains. Come on GW, give Decimus some time in the sun. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up a Major Mini. We actually have a Lord of the Night who is one of those prime Lords of the Night, not one of those, uninteresting beta bitches. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more surprisingly wholesome content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.